Hello and welcome. It is January 30th, Friday, and this is your weekly roundup from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for being patient. I know we had to push this back later and later in the day, but I will tell you that I was not just doing nothing. I was working hard and got here as quickly as I can. So I appreciate all your patience, and hello to everybody who's already here. Alicia K. Merrill, therapist, Jonna Moore, Heather Cooper Smith, Farm Girl, Maine Coon Mama Nicole. Thank you guys. It's so good to see all of you. I appreciate you coming back every single week with all of your support. We couldn't do it without you. And to everybody who's here new today, welcome. This is something I think you're going to enjoy. A lot took place this week, a lot to dive into, including some breaking news that happened even earlier today that we will talk about at the top of the show. And if you're watching on Facebook or X, welcome. We love having you. Please say hello in the chat so that we can hear from you. But let me introduce myself to all of you who might be new here. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I was there for about 10 years or so, and then I left to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And we started this channel, Courtroom Confidential, with the idea of presenting to you, giving you both sides of the courtroom. We hope that we do that. And this is a show we call our weekly roundup, which is a recap in all things true crime taking place this week. So take a deep breath. You've made it. You've made it through another week. It's a wild one. And I feel like I say that every single week, but it has been a wild one. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it. Heather Cooper Smith, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate you for being here and your support. And as always, please stick around to the very end because we do have some announcements. Don't leave early, is all I'll say. But yeah, it was a whirlwind of a day and it's been a whirlwind of a week. So a lot for us to get into. So let's get rolling. Breaking news: as a New York federal judge dismisses murder charges and the death penalty against accused assassin Luigi Mangione. Plus, the Virginia man accused of planning to kill his wife in a bizarre plot with the family's au pair took the stand this week, hoping to convince jurors he had nothing to do with the double homicide charges against him. And a newly unsealed affidavit alleges the Illinois surgeon accused of murdering his ex-wife and her dentist husband was lurking around the victim's home weeks before they were gunned down. All this and more this week on Courtroom Confidential. As you can tell, lots for us to dive into this week. As always, we are honored you have chosen us to bring you these updates. I am your host, Joshua Ritter, an award-winning Los Angeles prosecutor turned criminal defense attorney with 20 years experience navigating the criminal justice system, bringing you my unique insights from both sides of the courtroom. Today is Friday, January 30th, 2026, and this is your Courtroom Confidential weekly roundup. Let's jump in. A federal New York judge on Friday dismissed murder and weapons charges against alleged UnitedHealthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione, eliminating the possibility of the death penalty if convicted. Mangione, age 27, had pled not guilty to murder, weapons, and stalking charges stemming from the 2024 Midtown Manhattan killing of Brian Thompson. U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett, ruled that because the stalking charges were not considered a, quote, crime of violence under the current Supreme Court standard, the ability to bring federal murder charges during the course of stalking could therefore not be properly charged. The remaining stalking charges carry a potential sentence of life in prison. Jury selection in the federal case had been scheduled to begin in September. Mangione has also pled not guilty to murder, weapons, and forgery charges in Manhattan State Court. No trial date has been set, though the Manhattan District Attorney's Office sent a letter this week urging the judge to schedule trial for July 1st. All right, what's happening here? A lot to unpack. Let me explain it this way. Under federal law, you cannot just bring a straight murder charge. You need some sort of underlying charge. And usually we're not all that concerned with this. Usually in a federal case, you're talking about RICO or some sort of continuing course of criminal enterprise that allows for them to bring murder charges. But to bring a standalone murder charge, they need some sort of underlying crime. And that crime has to be a crime of violence. It's called the federal hook. So in this case, the feds had alleged that crime, that underlying crime, was stalking. Now, the Supreme Court has said that in order for a crime to be considered a crime of violence, you have to look at it in a vacuum. In other words, looking at the stalking in this case, this was stalking in the furtherance of, in pursuit of, with the end goal of, and in fact did accomplish murder. But you have to look at stalking in just the words of the law itself, just by the elements. And if that crime could potentially, hypothetically, in a sanitized environment, be committed without violence toward the victim, then that's not considered a crime of violence, which may seem like a bizarre way to take a look at the law, but that is the current landscape of the law. So the defense in this case argued, listen, you can in fact commit the crime of stalking without violence towards the intended victim. What if your harassment, which is a way to satisfy stalking, can be committed by threatening violence against yourself, by the defendant threatening violence of self-harm rather than harm against the victim? Isn't then that satisfying the elements of stalking without violence directed at the victim, therefore making it not a crime of violence? And the judge went along with it. The judge was persuaded by those arguments. Even the judge said in her own opinion that she finds this to be kind of a hard to believe result, but it is the current landscape of the law. So if stalking is not considered a crime of violence, then the federal murder charge has no underlying charge to hang its hat on and therefore cannot stand on itself. The murder charge goes away and therefore the death penalty goes away. So what now? What are we left with? Well, first of all, they can proceed just on the stalking charge. The stalking charge, because it did lead to a murder, it was stalking for the purposes of murder, has a life without parole exposure on it. And they could pursue that. And there's a very real possibility that if nothing changes and they do pursue that and he is convicted, they can bring in all of the evidence of the murder itself into sentencing, and he very well might be sentenced to life without parole. But in the meantime, there is still the option for the prosecution to appeal this, which is very rare. You don't oftentimes talk about prosecutors appealing anything. They can't bring what's called an interlocutory appeal, which is just a lawyer's way of saying an appeal before the matter has actually been finally decided at trial. And they can bring this in front of an appellate court and say, listen, we don't think that the judge's analysis of this underlying crime is correct. But I'll tell you, most judges are going to still have that same precedent established by the Supreme Court on how to analyze this. And I think those arguments might be persuasive even to an appellate court. We might see this have to make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court to decide, is stalking in fact a crime of violence, or is the way that the Supreme Court has required courts to look at these crimes and analyze if they are a crime of violence, is that a correct way of doing it? That could obviously take a lot of time. It may not even be accepted by the Supreme Court to make this decision. It is something that has never been brought up before, this specific question about stalking. So it's interesting, and this could go many different ways. Of course, if they do take an appeal, you can expect this case, at least on the federal side, to last a lot longer. Is this a win for the defense? Absolutely. I don't think there's any way getting around that this is a win for the defense. If you saw the beaming faces of the defense attorneys outside of court today, then you'd understand they view this as a win. Their goal in this, I think, has always been from the very beginning to try to, quote unquote, save their client's life. And I think that they feel like they've come a tremendous step towards that today. And by the way, this isn't their only win. They also got the win out of state court by having the judge in that case, and I think in a even more shocking and probably wrong ruling, decide that this wasn't in furtherance of any kind of terrorism, therefore making it not first degree in New York State Court, but second degree, where he could be looking at as little as 15 years to life in that case. So any way you look at it, I think The defense is walking home today thinking that they've had a tremendous win, and it is a setback for the prosecution. We'll see how things proceed next. But what do you guys think? The judge didn't seem happy with these results. Many people watching don't seem all those happy with these results. But the question to you is this the right thing according to the law as we understand it? Please let us know in the comments. Joy W. Can says, stalking to me is a violent crime. Well, you're not alone, Joy W. Can. Appreciate that. Leanne Dotzel says, I don't remember stalking ever ending with a good intention. That's very true, too. And Farm Girl, thank you so much for gifting the Courtroom Confidential membership. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your support. Brendan Banfield, the Virginia man charged in the killing of his wife and another man, testified Thursday, telling jurors he yelled police when he burst into an upstairs bedroom and found his naked wife on the floor with a stranger. The former IRS agent is accused of conspiring with the family's Brazilian au pair, Juliana Perez Magalhães, to kill his wife, Christine Banfield, and a man named Joe Ryan. Banfield testified this week that he went to their bedroom after hearing what sounded like, quote unquote, sex, and found Ryan with his wife. He said Christine told him Ryan had a knife, and when he told him to drop it, Ryan refused. Police have said both Banfield and Magalhães shot Ryan. Banfield testified he was armed with his service weapon, but claimed he did not want to shoot Ryan. He told jurors he was tending to his wife when he heard a gunshot and turned to see Magalhães holding a gun she had retrieved from his safe. Earlier in the week, Banfield emphatically denied conspiring with Magalhães to kill his wife. Let's listen to that.
I think that it's an absurd line of questioning for something that is not serious, that a plan was made to get rid of my wife. That is absolutely crazy.
Banfield, now age 40, also acknowledged having an affair with the 25-year-old au pair, which began in August of 2022, less than a year after she was hired to help care for the couple's daughter, who is now 7 years old, saying, quote, I was definitely in love with her, but adding, we weren't together when Christine died. Banfield has pled not guilty to 4 counts of aggravated murder and using a firearm in the commission of a felony for the February 24th, 2023 killings. If convicted, he could face life in prison. The jury will continue deliberations on Monday. Join the community on our sister channel, CC Live Trials, to watch the verdict when it happens. What's happening here? Well, one, was it a smart move for Banfield to testify? No, I don't think so. I think anybody who watched that can agree it was probably not a smart move. He probably did no favors for himself in testifying. And usually that's true. It's usually not a good idea to testify. And this case might be giving us one example, but there's many reasons for it. In fact, I can think of only 2 quote unquote good reasons why a person might want to testify. One is that there is simply no other way in getting crucially important evidence in front of the jury but for the defendant to testify. Something that only the defendant's testimony can actually present into evidence in court. Those examples are very rare. The other good reason is it's just a flat out Hail Mary. You've got nothing else left to lose. Your case is going down in flames, and you feel like, hey, maybe I can get up there, charm one juror into thinking that I didn't have something to do with this. But even when you're telling the truth, testifying, especially as the defendant, is an incredibly difficult thing to do. First of all, there's the nerves of all of it, the stress of the situation. This isn't normal. You're on trial literally for your life, potentially. So there's a lot on the line, and people just don't behave at their best sometimes under that. Also, you're not having a normal conversation. This isn't like talking to a person and telling them what took place. It's this stilted question and answer way, and objections are being made, and you have to answer questions in a very specific way. And it's just not easy, even when you know what you're doing and even when you understand the rules. But finally, you've then, after you've dealt with your own attorney, got to deal with cross-examination. Got to go through the crucible of cross-examination by a very skilled practitioner in the form of the prosecutor. And that is just no easy task. And I don't even care if what you have to say is the truth. It's not going to come off all that well. But why did it fail, especially in this case? I think there were many reasons, but I think probably the one that shone through more than anything for me is that he cannot help himself. He cannot help himself from trying to play the hero. He had to have that moment where he was saying that he came in and was trying to save her. He can't even help himself in what could have been an opportunity for him to blame this entire thing on Juliana. He wouldn't even, wouldn't that have been a more convincing argument to make that she planned this, she put this all together, he just happened upon their deaths, but it was all the planning of this woman who was obsessed with him. But he couldn't bring himself to do that because in the end, he needed to be this great guy. Even if that meant that he testified at the very end that he wasn't even with Juliana anymore. That was something that was important to him, for jurors to understand that his marriage was still good, that the affair had ended, and that this tragedy just befell them all. It was a person caught up in their own narcissism, I think. And I think that was something that clearly shone through to me and probably will to jurors. We will see. End of the day, it all came down to this moment, I think, in this trial. And I've said that many times before. When the defendant testifies, you really can throw out nearly everything that's taken place before. If they believe him, if one juror believes him, then it really doesn't matter the forensics, the experts, the other evidence. I mean, short of a crime being caught on videotape for everyone to watch themselves. And even in those instances, sometimes a defendant can convince one juror that what their eyes deceive them. But really, it comes down to this one very moment and how do they not only testify as far as the facts, but portray themselves and how they carry themselves and the kind of person the jurors simply believe them to be. This was a Hail Mary, and I think it failed. But what do you guys think? The jury is out, and so are you. So we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think he's guilty, not guilty, mistrial? Hopefully not. Please let us know in the comments. Whisk Brand says he wanted to be seen as a federal agent equaling a hero. I think absolutely that's true. Grace Richards says, I think he felt he was arrogant enough that he could persuade the jury. I think we see that a lot with people who decide to testify, is they think they're smarter than everybody else, and everybody else will appreciate that. And Annalie Finch, thank you so much for the super chat, says coffee donation for our hardworking mods. Well, we appreciate that. New court documents allege Michael McKee stalked his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, for weeks before the December murders of Monique and her husband, Spencer Tepe, in their Columbus home. According to court records, video evidence shows McKee, age 39, entering the curtilage of the Tepe home on December 6, 2025, and leaving hours later. That same day, Monique and Spencer Tepe had been attending the Big Ten championship game in Indiana. Monique unexpectedly left the game at halftime to return to her hotel, and Spencer told friends she was upset about something involving her ex-husband. McKee pled not guilty on January 23rd to 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary while using a firearm suppressor. He appeared by video from jail from his Franklin County arraignment, where defense attorney Diane Menashe waived a request for bond for now. Friends told investigators Monique had said McKee was abusive during their marriage and had threatened her before and after it ended. Court records say at least one witness reported McKee forced unwanted sex and strangled her, and that he said, quote, he could kill her at any time, adding he would find her by the house next to hers and that she would always be his wife. What's happening here? This new information. It was not very long, just a couple of paragraphs, but I think it's given us a wealth of understanding of who he is and what may have been happening in those 8 years between when their marriage originally ended and when these murders took place. And if I had to put it all in one word, it would be obsession. He was obviously obsessed with her. When an arrest is made of a person who had not been married to someone 8 years later, that's the first thing the police are going to try to look into. And they're trying to get a fuller understanding. And they want to understand, what is it about the relationship? What is it about this person that could have caused him to continue to hold on for so long? And that's why I say, when you read between the lines of this new information, we start to find out a little bit more. And one of the things that stood out to me is the behavior of Monique and her husband, Spencer, when she becomes upset during this football game. I think it is a safe assumption to go with the idea that she either knew McKee was at their home or was contacted by McKee on this day. There's just too much coincidence there that he would both be at their home and that she would leave this game upset because of her ex-husband on the same day. So knowing that she was either contacted by him or for whatever reason knew he was at their home, the idea that she was so troubled by that she left the game, but Spencer didn't leave the game, leads me to believe that this is not the first time they've dealt with something like that. Leads me to believe that they've been dealing with this for a while. And though it may be something troubling to her, she's not going to allow it to disturb her husband's day. The other thing that's interesting is that there's no police report for what took place that day, which again is this idea that it was something they had been dealing with for some time, but didn't feel like they needed to involve law enforcement. And I don't know if that is telling us that they felt it wasn't serious or if they felt that they wouldn't get help. The other question I think this raises is, why was he there? Was this a dry run? Was this practice? Was this a failed attempt at murder? He was surprised to not find them there. I can't imagine that he showed up 2 states away, several hours drive, and then didn't make something of it to either contact her or maybe learn information about how he would get into that house at a future date. And why was it continuing to heat up this close towards the murders after 8 years? In other words, if this was kind of ongoing abuse and threats, that's one thing. But what, after all of this time passing, caused him to not forget about her, but become even more bothered by her and more angered that he decided to commit murder? The last question I have on all of this is, could this have been avoided? Friends knew, husband knew. Why didn't law enforcement know? Or perhaps they did and we just have not found out yet. But what is it that prevented them from involving police or going out and getting some sort of restraining order? Was it fear? Was it embarrassment? Was it that they felt that the current state of the law simply wouldn't help them? It seems to me that for something going on this long, this may have been a tragedy that who knows if it could have been avoided. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there's anything that could have been done to avoid the murder of 2 beautiful people? Please let us know in the comments. Rock and Roll 888 says, it's all very confusing to me. You're not alone. I think a lot of us are still confused. Southern CJB says, totally agree, Josh. Cell phone data is going to be interesting. I completely agree with that. His digital footprint's going to be revealing. And Roy, thank you so much for gifting the Courtroom Confidential memberships, for all of your support. We greatly appreciate you. Before we dive into the other cases making headlines this week, I'm just going to ask one very small favor, and that is if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel now. It's completely free, and it's a great way to help support the channel. We want to continue to provide you with the highest quality content that we possibly can, and the best way that we can do that is through your support. Also making headlines, less than a month before the murder trial for a Utah woman accused of fatally poisoning her husband is expected to begin, her defense is accusing members of the prosecution of threatening or harassing witnesses. Corey Richens, a Camas mother and realtor, is charged with aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder, along with insurance fraud and forgery charges. Prosecutors allege Richens tried to poison her husband, Eric, on Valentine's Day of 2022, and then fatally poisoned him less than a month later. In the year between his death and the filing of charges, Richens published a children's book about grief. In a motion filed Sunday, Richens' attorney asked Judge Richard Mrazek to order prosecutors and investigators to turn over all communications with witnesses. The motion includes screenshots of messages involving two witnesses communicating with the lead investigators in the case. Defense attorney Catherine Nestor said one witness contacted the defense saying she was being harassed and asking if they could do anything to, quote, protect her from them. Nestor said the witness told the investigator she did not want prosecutors to prepare her testimony and asked that questions be sent in writing. According to the filing, the investigator rescinded, saying, quote, "You have received a subpoena to appear at the court as a witness. If you fail to do so, the judge will issue a warrant for your arrest. You will then have to sit in a holding cell until you are needed to testify. So make your life easier and answer our calls so we can prep you or on what you will be asked. Otherwise, the next time I knock on your door, I'll have a warrant and a catch pole for the dog." This is blatant witness intimidation, the defense motion argues. In another exchange, investigators responded to an unnamed witness stating, quote, "The immunity granted by the prosecution remains conditional upon continued cooperation. Declining to participate further may place that immunity at risk." Nestor argues Utah law prohibits threats against witnesses, including threats of arrest or withdrawal of immunity, and says the communications violate the Victim and Witness Rights Act. She also contends the messages are relevant to witness credibility and must be disclosed, requesting all texts, voicemails, recorded calls, emails, or other communications between witnesses and the prosecution team. Richens will be back in court on February 2nd for a hearing. Jury selection is scheduled to begin February 10th, with trial set to start February 23rd. Are these threats? Or are these just detectives letting witnesses know exactly what's up? I mean, this is true. That is the state of the law. You got an immunity deal, you got to show up or you're going to be found in contempt. Are they just enjoying the benefits of this immunity deal, or are they playing games? I say quit with the games. Federal prosecutors opened the sex trafficking trial of three wealthy brothers by telling jurors the men were, quote, partners in crime who used wealth and privilege to lure women and girls with promises of trips, exclusive parties, and celebrity encounters, then sexually assaulted them. The former real estate titans Oren and Tal Alexander, along with their brother Alon Alexander, have denied sexually assaulting anyone or running a sex trafficking conspiracy, as prosecutors have charged. Quote, "These three brothers masqueraded as party boys when really they were predators." Assistant U.S. Attorney Madison Smizer said, quote, "The brothers used whatever means necessary, sometimes drugs, sometimes alcohol, sometimes brute force, to carry out their crimes." Prosecutors said jurors would hear evidence of assault spanning more than a decade, including video of an alleged assault of a then 17-year-old by Oren, an alleged assault by Alon after a Manhattan party, and an alleged assault by Tal in the Hamptons. Quote, "They celebrated assaulting women and girls," Smizer added, including in text messages showing the defendants knew the only thing that could bring them down was, quote, "some hoe complaining." Defense attorneys acknowledged the brothers were successful, ambitious, and arrogant young men who liked and pursued women so they could have as much sex as possible. However, quote, That's not trafficking. That's dating. That's hooking up, attorney Tenny Garagos told the jury, arguing accusers were motivated by shame, regret, or money. Another lawyer added, it was crude, it was arrogant, it will make you cringe, but we're not here for the asshole awards. The first accuser to testify told jurors she was drugged and assaulted by Alan in 2012 when she was 20 after attending an NBA Finals viewing party at actor Zac Efron's Manhattan penthouse. She said she later woke up in Alan's apartment, shocked and unable to remember how she got there. Later Wednesday, a second accuser testified about a 2014 assault in the shower of a Hamptons vacation home. She told jurors Tal attacked her after angrily saying, "Is this how you thank me for inviting you to a beautiful home?" And later told her, "You wanted that." If convicted, Tal and twins Alan and Oren could face life in prison. That's an interesting way of making a defense, that this is all just fun and games and this is how people date each other nowadays. Pretty awful stuff, if you ask me. Before we get into the rest of the week's cases, here's something worth thinking about as the new year gets underway. A lot of people reset their passwords, clean out their inboxes, and assume that means they're starting the year fresh. But the truth is, if your information was already exposed last year, the risk doesn't reset on January 1st. Data brokers and hackers are still out there, and your personal information may already be circulating without you even knowing it. That's why starting the year protected matters. That's why I use this episode's sponsor, Aura. Aura provides full digital security, so you're covered even when breaches and scams happen. You get dark web alerts, bank fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, and password manager, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all in one app. Try Aura free for 14 days at aura.com/courtroomconfidential. You'll see exactly where your info's being sold and get it removed. It's free to try, it protects you, and it helps support the show. Retired Circuit Judge Ralph Wilson has been assigned to preside over the Aaron Spencer trial after Judge Barbara Elmore was removed from the case. The Arkansas Supreme Court stayed the trial last week after Elmore declined to recuse herself. The court's ruling did not elaborate on the judge's removal. The court also vacated an order that limited courtroom occupancy and no recordings of the proceedings. Spencer was arrested in 2024 and charged with second-degree murder in the shooting death of 67-year-old Michael Fossler. On October 8th, 2024, deputies responded to a home after reports that Spencer's then 14-year-old daughter was missing. According to a report, Spencer found her inside a vehicle with Fossler. After a confrontation, Fossler was allegedly shot by Spencer and later pronounced dead at the scene. He has pled not guilty and is currently campaigning for Lonoke County Sheriff. A new trial date has not yet been set following this reassignment. Bravo to the Arkansas Supreme Court. With a case this contentious and with many people watching, the last thing we want is more reason to not trust the system. On Wednesday, a Utah jury found a man guilty of murder in the shooting death of his brother-in-law, rejecting his claim of self-defense, but acquitted him of conspiring with his mother and sister to commit the murder. Kevin Ellis shot and killed Matthew Ristelli on July 12, 2024, shortly after Ristelli arrived at Ellis's mother's home, where Ristelli intended to meet his wife and children to bring them back to California. Ellis, age 35, was convicted of murder, obstruction of justice, domestic violence in the presence of a child, possession of a gun as a restricted person, and drug possession. He was found not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Prosecutors argue Ellis, his mother, Tracy Grist, and his sister, Catherine Ristelli, lured Matthew Ristelli to the home under the guise of reconciliation with his wife. They said Catherine placed a tracker on Ristelli's truck and the family monitored his arrival. Deputy Utah County Attorney Adam Pomeroy said Ellis and Grist delayed calling 911 and placed a knife backward in Ristelli's non-dominant hand to falsely claim self-defense. Ellis's attorneys acknowledged there was a conspiracy, but argued Ellis was duped and unknowingly used as their champion. The trial began January 20th and included testimony from Catherine, who has already pled guilty to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to at least 7 years to life and said she pled guilty to give her children and husband justice. She's testified she invited her husband inside as part of, quote, the plan to murder him, adding, we were getting ready for his arrival by putting toys away, putting blankets over the couch to avoid blood spatter. She also described hearing gunshots and discussions about placing a knife in his hand. Grist is charged with conspiring to murder Matthew Rastelli and is scheduled for trial in April. Ellis is set to be sentenced March 23rd. Murder, but not conspiracy. That seems like a rather bizarre ending to this case. Before we get to what's coming up next week, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this growing community. But I want to give a very special shout out to Ann Potter for your review on Apple Podcasts, and to our CC crew members, Nate and Tiff Knox, for your comments on YouTube. We can't thank you enough for your continued support. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave us a comment on YouTube. We appreciate your help in spreading the word about Courtroom Confidential. On the docket for next week, Charlie Adelson, who is seeking a new trial following his conviction in the 2014 murder for hire of his former brother-in-law, Dan Markell, has a hearing Tuesday, February 3rd for oral arguments in his appellate case. Tyler Robinson, the Utah man accused in the shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, will return to court on Tuesday, February 3rd. Gabriel Williams, a Florida teen accused of luring 14-year-old Danica Troy into a wooded area and shooting her multiple times before dousing her in gasoline and lighting her on fire, will be in court for a hearing Thursday, February 5th. Oklahoma pediatrician Neha Gupta, accused of killing her 4-year-old daughter Arya Talathi while on a trip to Florida, will return to court on Thursday, February 5th for a hearing. Courtney Clenny, a Miami social media influencer accused of fatally stabbing her boyfriend Christian Obumseli in 2022, will be in court on Friday, February 6th for a hearing. Disgraced former Massachusetts police officer Matthew Farwell, charged in the death of pregnant woman Sandra Birchmore, has a hearing on Friday, February 6th. Shanna Gardner and her estranged husband Mario Fernandez, who are accused of plotting to have her ex-husband Jared Bridegan killed in 2022, will return to court on Friday, February 6th for a hearing. And finally, please join us for our special question and answer series, Sunday Fun Day. All are invited to leave us a voice message with a true crime question at thecourtroomconfidential.com, which I will answer live during Sunday's show at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. You can find the live stream on YouTube, X, and Facebook. All right, if you're watching with us on YouTube, please stick around for announcements for our podcast platform listeners. That is it for us this week, folks. I'm your host, Josh Ritter. You can find us on social media at CR Confidential on X, at The Courtroom Confidential on Instagram, or at thecourtroomconfidential.com. Thank you again for joining me. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again next week for another episode of Courtroom Confidential. All right. I told you there was a lot going on. Wasn't that a lot of stuff to cover for 1 week? A lot of, and that wasn't even all of it. We just tried to give you some of the highlights. And then if you hear about what's on the docket for next week, it's going to be another wild and busy week. But I think the most shocking of everything today was the news on Luigi Mangione. Mitchell Busseries, thank you so much for becoming a member. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you, Mitchell. One of my dudes in the audience. Miss Minnie Parker, thank you so much for supporting the mods with coffees. Appreciate you. Joy W. Can, you're also so awesome for helping out the mods with coffee, keeping those mods wide awake. Best Nancy, thank you for gifting the membership. Always appreciate the gifted memberships and growing the community. All right. Let me give you some announcements. As promised, I hope you stuck around. One, let me tell you about our website, thecourtroomconfidential.com. That's where you can find 3 things that are very important that I want to share with you. I call them the big 3 M's. First of all, if you would like to leave us a message for Sunday Funday that we talked about coming up this Sunday, then go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on leave us a message. You can ask us a question about a true crime case, something that you're curious about the law, and I will answer those live on Sunday. Membership, for those of you that may have been gifted a membership, for those of you who are thinking, I want to become a member, well, you can learn all about our membership program by clicking on become a member at thecourtroomconfidential.com. And finally, merch. We've got you covered. We've got shirts in every possible color that you could imagine. We've got sweatshirts. We've got hoodies. We've got zip-ups. We've got beanies. We've got mugs. We've got pajama pants. Is there anything that we don't got? I don't think we've even got notebooks and things like that. So please check it out. Therapist says what I'm wearing today is called Sage Against the Machine. Very well done. Joy W. Can says all of the usual suspects. I like that. Very good. And Eroy, thank you for the super sticker, says shout out to the CC Live mods for keeping us entertained and in line. Verdict Watch has never been so much fun. Yeah, I'm surprised. I think the only reason why is I hate these Friday deliberations, and we're talking about Banfield, when they have just a few hours, because I always feel like you put a group of 12 strangers together in a room and they're just going to take a while to introduce themselves. So we are doing Verdict Watch on CC Live Trials. Please be there with us. The second that thing we have a verdict, please head right over and watch it live with us. Criminally in Sage, thanks to Cat Flap Carnage. Thank you so much for my t-shirt. Yeah, that's the t-shirt color you're saying. Yeah. I got that part. All right. What else did you miss? Well, on Wednesday, we had Dr. Patrice Berry on our show, and we talked about Michael McKee. We talked about Monique and Spencer Tepe. Well, that's the same case, but we also talked about Brendan Banfield, her thoughts. She's been watching that one. She had some really excellent thoughts on him as well. And we even talked a little bit about Lindsay Clancy. I've been really interested to hear her thoughts on that case. You guys loved it. If you haven't watched it, listen to everybody else. They loved it. Go back and watch it. It's up on our channel now. Thursday, over at Fox Nation, we had the latest episode of the weekly rap sheet. So I don't want you guys to miss out on that. That's on the streaming service Fox Nation. It's a show that I'm very honored to be co-hosting along with Paul Morrow and Donna Rotuno. We talked about Aaron Spencer. We talked about Ryan Wedding. We talked about this case out of California, Southern California here. You may not have heard about, but it's fascinating. Gordon Gudarzi. So please check that one out. And then what do you got in store for you this week? Well, we already mentioned we're on Verdict Watch for Brendan Banfield on CC Live Trials. So go over to CC Live Trials right now and click the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. True Crime in a Minute. Good to see you. Thank you for the super chat. Says the best merch, great quality, and I am picky, high maintenance. Thank you for saying that, because I wear these things all the time, even when I'm not on camera here with you guys. They're very, very comfortable shirts. They're very nice quality. I wish we could say we made them, but we are making sure that the stuff that we provide to you is the best. I'm obsessed with my quarter zip, says Eroy. I am too. I wear it all the time when I'm at the airport because I feel like it makes me look like I'm some cool reporter for some big time true crime outlet. And I guess in a way I kind of am. Excellent quality, says Best Nancy. Thank you, Best Nancy. Saturday, I'm returning the favor to Dr. Patrice Berry. I'm going to be on her channel, Psychologist Reacts. That's at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking about the Tepe murders, Michael McKee again. So please check that out. Alicia K. Mao says the latest sidebar is very good. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't mention that all that often, but there is, with all of my spare time, another podcast that I host on true crime news on their channel called The Sidebar. So that's out today as well. Thank you for that, Alicia Cameo. I appreciate you watching wherever I'm at. Nate says, aren't you getting us a discount to Fox? I'm working on it, Nate. They're a large corporation and I'm one little guy, but I'm knocking on the door. So stay tuned. And I promise you, as soon as I get it, you guys will get it. Then stay tuned on Sunday. We've got Sunday Funday is back live at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, back at our usual time, because it is that slow week in between the playoffs and Super Bowl. So please tune in. Lots of great questions. You still have time to get a question in. We're taking them all the way until midnight this evening. And then finally, Monday, we're back with our Monday night true crime docket guest TBD, to be determined. We're working on it. We were tossing around ideas today. We're trying to figure out which case we want to talk about. Been a lot of updates in the news. Best Nancy golf clap, 15 months. That's a long time. That's a long time. Happy birthday +3. I appreciate you for being such a big part of this community. And then finally, once we've got your entire week covered, we also have your plans covered for as far out as May 29th through 31st. I know where you're going to be. You're going to be in Vegas because you're going to CrimeCon. We're going to be there. A bunch of other creators that you guys are all fans of are going to be there. I'm trying to convince more people to be there. We've already got some plans in the works to have some meetups, to do some, I don't know, fun stuff, whatever fun stuff we can do. Not to mention just being able to lay eyeballs on a lot of you folks and shake your hand and take a picture. So we would love to see you there. May 29th through 31st in Las Vegas. And we've got a discount code for that. So we've got that one already covered. Enter the word courtroom, all caps, all one word at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. All right, you guys, you're all fantastic. Thank you again for dealing with the time change. I think what you're finding out is that I'm in very little control of my own life. I just kind of go where I'm told when I'm told. But you guys are fantastic for rolling with the punches. So thank you for being here. You're a very, very special shout out. And thank you to Afton, Shy Gal, Kathy, and therapists, for being our mods, the best in the business. Kaylin, wasn't that an incredible presentation today? This is all Kaylin. I'm just the guy who sits here and says words, but it's all Kaylin putting it together and making it look fancy. So big shout out and thank you to her. And Tiffany, in case you didn't know, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.